One of the great coaches in this early era was a gentleman by the name of Fred Dawson. Fred Dawson was actually hired to come to Nebraska to not only coach the team, but to also help raise money for the new Memorial Stadium. And right around here in the corner, I'm going to have you all kind of change your chairs and bring them over here. I'm talking about this area now. This display here talks about the building of Memorial Stadium. You might just want to kind of come on around here because we can then move here. Fred Dawson was hired to come in and raise money for a new stadium and to also coach the team. I think this candy box is a wonderful illustration of what was going on back at this time. If you take a look at this candy box, this actually has a picture of what Memorial Stadium was supposed to look like. And actually, it was supposed to be a coliseum. It was supposed to be entirely encircled. And the way that the university raised money is, number one, they raised money through students holding special events like this Cornhusker Roundup Day. They sold songbooks, and they also sold candy boxes. All this money was donated to go into the building fund of Memorial Stadium. Also, the city of Lincoln pledged money, and the city of Omaha pledged money. So it was those three factors which helped make Memorial Stadium a reality. And when people pledged money, they got a little button that says, building pledge. And then when they paid their pledge, then they got another button that says pledge paid in full. So this is a real nice understanding of how Memorial Stadium came about. As they got close to the time of building it, they did not have enough funds to make the entire circle, so they basically built two ends. And it was their plans to shortly afterwards enclose it and make it a wonderful coliseum. And just a note, that circle never took place until the Rotterdam era. Just keep that in mind. They thought it was going to happen very shortly after that, so it didn't happen. And I'll explain why it didn't. This is an early banner that flew at Memorial Stadium shortly after it opened. And that's a really nice graphic on just the way the game is kind of represented back there. As Nebraska lived in with this new stadium in 1923, Nebraska entered a period which is known as the golden age of Nebraska football. This is also a period that is known as the golden age of sports because it was this time, it was after World War I, and people then had a chance to refocus on the fun things in life. Keep in mind, this is the time of the roaring 20s. And it was a time when people became very festive. And it was a time that people were allowed to concentrate on such things as sports. And sports heroes grew up during this time. You have people like Babe Ruth this time, Ty Cobb, Bobby Jones in golf, Newt Rockne, and people like that. It was in 1923 that Newt Rockne brought in a group of players from Notre Dame, and their pictures is over on the wall over there. And it was this group of people that was known as the Four Horsemen of Notre Dame. They came into Nebraska in 1923, and due a large part to this player right here, Ed Weir, the Nebraska Cornhusker, beat the Four Horsemen of Notre Dame and denied them a national title. Then in 1924, Nebraska went out to Notre Dame, and the Four Horsemen of Notre Dame killed Nebraska and claimed their first title in 1924. In 1928, Nebraska was very close to going to the Rose Bowl game, and then a late season loss prevented them from going to the Rose Bowl way back in 1928. A lot of people don't realize that. Then, as Nebraska continued into the 30s, Nebraska hired a coach by the name of D.X. Bible, and D.X. Bible is still considered one of the most beloved coaches in the history of Nebraska football. He was a true gentleman. He traveled the state. He really built up the program in the 1930s. And in the 30s, when he was coaching, he coached for 8 years. And 6 of those years, the team won 6 Big Six conference championships. It was the Big Six conference back at that time. And some of the outstanding players at that time was a gentleman by the name of Lloyd Cardwell, who was a longtime resident of Omaha. Sam Francis was one of the great athletes, and George Sawyer are real legends in Nebraska football history. Sam Francis, after he graduated, he went on to play in the Olympics, won a gold medal, and he was the #1 draft pick in the NFL after his senior season. And Sam Francis came in second in the Heisman voting back in that year. And so a lot of people don't realize that Nebraska was really a competitive team. Once again, it was still not getting the national recognition that it should have, but we were winning consistently. We had great All-Americans. We had great legends, and the program was simply getting better every year. DX Bible left the University of Nebraska after the 1936 season and accepted the head coaching job at the University of Texas. He became a Longhorn. He was originally from Texas and he wanted to return back home. He had picked his successor, which was a gentleman by the name of Biff Jones. Biff Jones was a military officer, and when he came to Nebraska, he was a disciplinarian. Biff Jones was a great football coach, a great football mind, but he was a real disciplinarian. And he was one of those fellas that you either liked him or you didn't like him. And somewhere along the line, Biff Jones didn't get along with group of people that have become known as the Friends of O Street. And those are the downtown merchants of Lincoln. If we go back, the downtown merchants really put a lot of pressure on several coaches. That was a big reason that Fred Dawson left Nebraska, was the downtown merchants of Lincoln. And Ed Berg left Nebraska. Highly successful coaches, winning a lot of games. But the downtown merchants in Lincoln had a way of getting real nasty when the team didn't win every game. When Nebraska was not invited to attend the Rose Bowl in 1928, the merchants made it so tough for Ed Berg that after the season he said, I'm done. I'm not going to come back. And so here we were taking very, very highly successful coaches, and just because of the pressure, they were leaving. And it was not good for the program. And so the lesson that we can learn today from that is, as fans, we need to keep quiet when coaching. We all remember just a few years ago when there were fans yelling for Tom Osborne to retire. And what a travesty, Not when you have a good man. You let him do his job. But Biff Jones came in, and once again, he was real highly successful. I need to just go back and make one point. In 1925, that was the last game against Nebraska and Notre Dame, and the program for that game is right over there. After that game, Notre Dame said they didn't want to play Nebraska anymore. And there have been several reasons why this happened. Notre Dame claims that it was because the people were very prejudiced and there was some religious persecution going on, that Nebraska fans were very anti-Catholic and were saying some wrong things. Nebraska fans said that they stopped the series because we beat them too much and we were preventing them from winning national titles. And I think it's probably a combination. Newt Rockne got along with the Nebraska fans very well, and he was always gracious to Nebraska. But I think it was the fans that maybe helped in the rivalry. And so in 1925, the rivalry that was a great rivalry ended. We did play them a couple times in the 1940s. We played them in one bowl game in the 70s, and this year is really the first time that we've had a chance to review that series. And it was a great series, and I'm glad to see it happen again. But it was an intense series back there. And because Notre Dame was dropped off the Nebraska schedule, the two teams that then became Nebraska's rivalry was the University of Pittsburgh and the University of Minnesota. And those two teams in the 30s and 40s were excellent teams. And we usually didn't beat them. We had better luck against Notre Dame than we did Minnesota and Pittsburgh. They regularly beat us. But Biff Jones came in 1937, and the first game of the year he beat Minnesota, something DX Bible was never able to do. If it hadn't been for Minnesota and Pittsburgh, DX Bible probably would have won 3 national titles, because he had several years where the only loss came against either Pittsburgh or against Minnesota. But in his first game as a Cornhusker head coach, they beat Minnesota, and then Biff Jones fielded some excellent teams. The real highlight of the Biff Jones era came in 1940 when they lost the early game to Minnesota, but then the rest of the season they went undefeated. And at the conclusion of the 1940 season, they were invited to the first bowl game ever, which was the Rose Bowl, which was played on January 1, 1941. And if you want to bring your chairs into here now, I'll talk briefly about the Rose Bowl, and then we'll go on to the next area. The Rose Bowl was the first bowl game in the history of the Nebraska Cornhusker program. And this display shows the program, ticket stubs, souvenirs, and it was a real highlight in the history of the Nebraska program. This also represents the 50th year of Nebraska football. So on their 50th anniversary, they inaugurated their first bowl game. And you know, even today, the largest crowd that a Nebraska team has ever played in front of was the 1941 Bowl. No other team has played in front of as many people as this team right here. It was like 110,000 people, and Nebraska never played in front of that many people, even since then. Nebraska lost the game, played against the Stanford Indians, and now Stanford is known as the Cornhusker Collection. So you would have known for several years because Nebraska was so excited about playing the game. One of the things that was a real treat for me to obtain was Dr. Jack Benson, who was the running back of that team, gave me these signs. And when he left the field that day, he grabbed those two signs. And I think those two signs tell a lot about not only Nebraska football, but football in general. These were the signs that were placed on the field to reserve that area of the field for the team to actually stand. Because on the other side, you know, with photographers and everything else. And to think that, although in 1941, the signs that they used were nothing more than handwritten signs. I mean, today, what are the signs like? I mean, today you go to a major bulletin. I mean, it's professional printing on everything. So it's really kind of interesting to see that was the official reserve signs for the granddaddy of all, Rose Bowl. Biff Jones came back the next season in 1941, and he did not have a good year. It was also in December of 1941 that we were bought by Pearl Harbor. And what happened is Biff Jones was then called into active duty. He had no choice but he had to leave. And what the Army did with him, he was a major in the Army, is they sent Biff Jones to West Point, and he became the athletic director at West Point. Now keep in mind, West Point is the place that trains all the finest of the Army. That's where all the officers were trained. And these officers then went out and influenced all of the troops. So when you consider how influential Biff Jones became by being the athletic director at West Point, I mean, he had an extremely influential position. And when he went to West Point, if you go back and study the history of college football, it was during the war years. Army was winning national titles. It was during the war years that Army won 2 Heisman trophies. Doc Blanchard and Glenn Davis. Army was dominant during the war years. And it was all under the leadership of Biff Jones. He was a heck of a good coach. Yes, he was a disciplinarian. Yes, he was opinionated, but he was a great coach. After the war, federal law stated that a coach or any person had to be given a job. If they were called into duty, then after the war, their job was guaranteed. That was federal law. So Biff Jones came back to Nebraska, and Nebraska said, "Well, you have your job back. You can't be a coach." He said, "What?" They said, "Well, we want you to be a coach." Once again, it was the friends of those who didn't like him, so they basically wanted to get him out. So he said, "That's right, I resigned." Now, Biff Jones also had coached and been the head coach at the University of Oklahoma. Now notice, you've not heard me say Oklahoma up to this point, have you? So here you have Biff Jones being the head coach at Oklahoma, the head coach of Nebraska. He really left Nebraska on bad terms. He has had an influence over thousands of U.S. military officers. These officers had influence over tens of thousands of young recruits. What did Vic Jones tell everyone? Send everyone to Oklahoma. Right after the war, Oklahoma had been nothing up until the war. If you take the Nebraska history up until World War I, we had played Oklahoma 19 times. We had won 13 of those games. They had won 3 of those games, and there had been 3 ties. We dominated the Sooners up until World War II. After World War II, Biff Jones and everyone else really got on the Oklahoma bandwagon. And Oklahoma came out of the war as a powerhouse. And one of the biggest mistakes that Nebraska made was not getting along with Biff Jones. Couple that with the fact that we made poor decisions on some coaches. And what happened right after the war is Nebraska went into a real depression. And now we get into the third period of Nebraska football history, which is 1942 to 1961.